Very excited for this one. I'll be answering various questions that I received from YouTube, of course, but also Twitter, um, Instagram, and I think there's one from TikTok. So let's get into these questions. Let's make it happen. So so dog hear me out 2283 on YouTube says asks, what literature or research do you use when making a video? Fascinating stuff. Good question. So I use a mixture of things. I use really good articles that I find in my research. These articles can vary from things on Psychology Today to encyclopedia page. It can also include encyclopedia pages on like Britannica as well. But really good articles from really smart people with really good quotables, and I just quote them, and I get some insights from there. Other things I look at are books of mine. I may like skim through a few pages, or I may remember something I read, and then I'll go back and find it basically. And then there's of course me, my own insights, the things I come up with. Um, I often take like raw insights from others too, and then I add mine to them, um, and I kind of add clarity to what they're saying, and that's really people really appreciate that. So that's kind of my process when it comes to things. It depends on the topic, right? So depending on the topic, it'll depend on the type of article, and it'll depend on the type of book that I am kind of going back to. So hope that answers your question. And typically, my research, just to take it a little bit further, it can vary in terms of how long it takes, right? I may spread it across a couple days. I have some videos where I just did light research because I have a lot to say off top. Um, and there are other times where I have a lot to say off top, but I want to include this perspective of others, just in case I'm missing something. So that's the thing there. Next question from YouTube, Reem, Reme, Reme, Reme 7903. What inspires, motivates you, or gives you hope in these chaotic times? So that's a really good question because it's easy to look at the world and kind of really suck in the things going on in the world, and that affects how you vibrate, how you think, how you feel. But for one, my life purpose really grounds me. The things I like, the thing, my calling basically really grounds me. Making these videos, working on my businesses, um, psychology, self improvement, like these things relate to my life purpose, grounds me a lot. So when the world is the world, which you can't control the world, you can really only control yourself. I ground myself in my life purpose and the things I care for. And that gives me a lot of energy and inspiration and excitement. And because of that, I can kind of, it's kind of like hibernating. Like I can be in my own world and I can come out and be aware of what's going on in the world, but then also be back in my world. And I don't really allow the things going on in the world to affect my state too much because I know that if I let it affect my state too much for too long, it's not going to be a benefit for anybody. Um, and it'll actually make it more difficult for me to even contribute to helping that change, right? If I'm too like down and about over it. And of course, there are some things in the world that you can't control. Um, and also my understanding of vibration and reality. I understand that being in high spirits is a high vibrational state that brings in more things to give you more reasons to be in high spirits about. So that's another thing that I'm reminded of when it comes to just staying very grounded in chaotic times. Just because it's chaotic doesn't mean I have to be chaotic. Um, so there's that. Next, Fredo Sama, 3466 on YouTube says, asks, why is emotionally appealing content on the rise? Um, well, we're emotional beings, you know. So naturally, content that appeals to emotion, content that maybe triggers people or makes people happy, sad, anything like that is gonna be like a winning direction to go down for people that create that content, right? So if you think about it, really, a lot of entertainment is made to create invoke some sort of emotion. That's what makes it memorable. That's what makes people talk about it. You know, like my recent video on beauty standards. Um, it was a video to shine light on beauty standards, of course, but the topic is a heavy topic for a lot of people. And although that video didn't really get all that many views compared to some of my other videos on the channel, it got a good amount of comments. Compared to some videos, I get even more views than that because it's it's something people are emotionally invested in. So remember that things that invoke emotion are going to get people talking and more eyeballs. And when things get more eyeballs and get people talking, it gets more eyeballs and gets people talking even more, right? So you also want to be careful with this because although it's common, you want to be look out for things that try to purposely bait you into being emotional. So you'll leave a comment so that you can help boost it in the algorithm, so that you know your arguments with someone else boost that video or that piece of content even further. So that's the thing about emotionally appealing content, is that algorithms optimize to spread those as much as possible. So you're going to see those as much as possible. Shield Cure, guys, if I'm mispronouncing your usernames, my bad, but I'm doing my best here. Shukur asks, off topic, but are you Ugandan? No, I'm Senegalese. I'm from the West African country of Senegal. Yeah. Next question. David Harp, 2125, asks, do you have any degrees? No, I don't. I did go to college though, but I ended up not finishing college because it just wasn't for me. To me, it just I felt really boxed in. And the degree I was going for was computer science, which I did like going for it, but there was just more for me for the future. I could just tell. Also, just my consciousness work that I was getting into, I noticed my passion for this was way higher than programming. And because of that, I was like, in the next 40, 50, 60, 70 years of my life, what do I want to do? Like, as soon as I answered that question, it was a no-brainer. So then it became like, okay, I already know what I want to do. Why am I still here? Oh, it's because of the family pressure. Okay, so that's like the constraint. Like that's the problem. That's the actual problem here. It's not about what do I want to do. It's like, no, you feel compelled to be here because of some image you feel like you should keep up. So when I dropped that and let that go, and I kind of detached from, you know, certain people's expectations of me. What do you know? I was even happier. So no, I don't. It's funny. Some people do think I'm like a PhD, which is a great compliment. Thank you. Next question, HLD8924 on YouTube asks, how do you become more okay with being so different from your family? Or how do I become more okay with being so different from my family? That was probably a Freudian slip because I'm very different from my family. So I read that as if I was saying it. Funny. That's really funny. But how do you become more okay with being so different from my family? I've been working on myself and I noticed just how differently I think compared to them. View that as a blessing because you have to understand that families pass down certain cultural beliefs, customs, obviously genetics down the generations, and it leaves us with this like proclivity to behave like how they behave. But when you think differently, it now opens the door for you to be the black sheep, to add something different to the family lineage. And you thinking differently can be the one thing that changes so much. For example, if your family struggles with trauma, by you being the black sheep, you go a little bit meta and you start to understand that, hey, my family actually exhibits a lot of toxic behaviors. Let me look into this. And you look into it and you're like, oh, whoa, we got a lot of things to work on here. Let's say your family doesn't even want to work on that stuff. That's okay. With that understanding, as you go forward, if you have kids, or if you know, become some sort of teacher, or you become some sort of friend to someone, you can share these insights with others. And if, let's say, you're passing it down to your kids, you can share these insights to them, and you become a better parent because you thought differently, basically. So the reframe of this is essentially like, okay, how do I become more okay with being so different from my family? Um, it's understanding that your difference can be the thing that makes the family better. So appreciate that difference. Especially when you're like decently clear on the trajectory you want to head down. Um, and you can see just like the error in your family's thinking about the world and their worldviews. Like some of my followers, for example, have very religious families, um, and the religious worldview prevents them from being open minded, and that can really set someone back in learning more about life and becoming better as a person, because they're so indoctrinated by like the stage blue, worldview of religion, for example. you know so that's a big thing there. All right, so next question. I pay close attention. That's a nice username. Next question by I pay close attention. Yeah, pay close attention to this. Every time I react negatively in a huge way, it's related to being deceived or manipulated in some way. Okay, and the way I talk to myself, I'm always calling myself stupid. My defense mechanism is to always try to prove I'm not stupid to myself and everyone else. So my shadow trait is that I am actually stupid. That's a really good question. So essentially, what you're saying here is that you react very negatively to, you know, being manipulated, is what I'm seeing here, and then you end up talking to yourself very negatively in the process. Um, I'm guessing you're trying to prove to yourself and to them as well that you're not stupid, but you kind of tell yourself that you are. So when it comes to the shadow, it's facets, traits, and aspects of us that we don't own. So when it comes to intelligence, if we look at very smart people, what happens is they become very smart and they become identified with their intelligence. They got good grades. They're respected for being smart. They have maybe PhDs, whatever. What happens is they make a shadow out of ignorance or non understanding or non intelligence, for example. So what you have to focus on here is your ability to integrate and own the aspect of you that doesn't know, the aspect of you that is ignorant, that aspect of you that is getting things wrong. Now, you could call it stupid, but that is a strong word. And you may be in it, that may not be the right word to use. I would say that you just haven't integrated the ability to not know or to be wrong. And also, you also want to dissect this, because just because you have fallen into manipulation or you were wrong in something doesn't mean that you're fundamentally stupid. It doesn't. It's just a default kind of thought process you're going to because of subconscious programming. So now you have to look at your subconscious programming and think to yourself, where is this subconscious programming even coming from? Was it something a parent has told me growing up? Something a friend told me growing up? Something I just repeated, I learned from media? Like, where did this come from? And how do I let this go? Because just because it's been repeated through time and there's been emotion associated doesn't necessarily mean it's true, you know? So we got to watch the words we say to ourselves. So it's two things. First is owning the aspect of us that doesn't know, right? That's very healthy, leads to our wholeness. Because if we get things wrong, we fail at something, we don't beat ourselves up too much because we've owned the aspect of us that does fail. But we don't have to necessarily even identify as failures. So that's a big difference. there. And then you also have to look at your subconscious programming of like, what was my upbringing? Who has told these words to me to the point where I got to a point where I'm like saying it all the time, right? Because again, what you repeat to yourself, especially incorporated with emotion, becomes programmed in. And then that also becomes what you focus on. So you want to be very mindful of that. Hope that answered your question. SJ asks SJKI5JE. That sounds like a jet. That sounds like some like jet or like Elon Musk's like a name that Elon Musk would give to one of his kids. Uh, the quiz, the question is, what is low consciousness music? So I guess yeah, this was a question from my birthday post a few weeks ago. When I say the low consciousness music, I just mean music that is quote unquote like ignorant music that is not made for higher consciousness thinking. Of course, it's just made to have fun, just made to talk about like basic stuff, partying, um, alcohol, women, fun, those types of things. That's what I say like low consciousness music, right? I'm not gonna get into like the whole like 440 hertz, 432 hertz stuff. Some people don't listen to. Hold on. Some people don't listen to music because of the 440. I'm not gonna get into that. Uh, but I'm just saying like low consciousness music, that type of stuff. And in that post, I said that, hey, it's just about your relationship to it. Like, what mood does it put you in? That's what you want to look at with music. Don't fall into like, because a lot of the spiritual community talks about like, oh, don't listen to mainstream music or like music on whatever because it's 440 hertz. It's like, no, listen to it. It's just checking how you feel as you listen to the music. Like, for example, there's some gangster rap songs that put me in the highest mood ever, and then there's others that don't, and I don't listen to those ones, right? So that's what you want to look at. What is my state? What is my frequency as I'm listening to that? If it's high, good. If it's not, then don't listen to it. So next question, Govies85. What about those who are in war-torn countries? Okay, so this was related to my manifestation in reality being a mirror post. This is a really good question. So in some of my videos in the past, I've gotten the question like, okay, if this reality creation, reality is a mirror thing makes sense, but what about people in like third world countries, things like that? You have to understand that countries are ran by obviously various governments with various ways of thinking, various ways of behaving, various resources, various you know abilities, disabilities, advantages, etc. And then these governments do certain actions, which leads to countries, either benefiting or being at a disadvantage as well. There's obviously corruption at play. So when you look at that, and then you look at the fact that people get raised in these various countries, if you look at war-torn countries, for example, they are in very dire circumstances. They get born into very dire circumstances. At a young age, they get into these dire circumstances, and that's what becomes normalized, those dire circumstances. And a lot of times there's programming around the fact that this is just how life is. There's no way they can get around it. There's also programming around religion as well. And because of that, that person just views it, hey, that's just how life is. Even to you, let's say you're in a first world country, you look at them, you're like, oh, that's a horrible situation. To them, it's very normal. Even those that even know that they're in a very horrible situation, their mind can't necessarily perceive a future outside of that situation. Not everyone can perceive a future outside of it. So because of that, how they think and how they behave is a reflection of what's on, like how they go about life is a reflection of what's on the inside, how they're thinking, what's programmed in. And on top of that, religion is a factor here. I believe it was something called the World's Values Survey. Shout out to Leo Gora. the World Values Survey is like this survey that, does a lot of research about how the world works and all of that. And that survey showed that the poorer countries are more likely to be religious. The closer a country is to the survival line, the higher likelihood that they will be religious. So when you factor that in, that someone is more likely to cling on to religion as their savior, um, and they have the programming about things like, you know it's only the corrupt people that can see success, and we're good people, so God makes us suffer for that reason because we're good, like whatever that programming is, allows them to stay there. And you have to understand, when it comes to things like manifestation, it's about seeing a potential in the quantum field that doesn't exist in the 3D world. And how many people treat the 3D world as the end all be all? 90% of the world. So you can imagine that the law of mirroring still applies. It's just that it's not being used, or it's being used just in the opposite direction. So I hope that answers your question. K.686 asks, how do you differ disrespect from taking something personal? Okay, that's a really good question. So I don't necessarily separate these. You can be disrespected and you can still not take it personally. When you don't take things personally, you're just not letting it affect you too emotionally, but it doesn't mean there aren't actions that need to be taken. So if you're walking out down the street and some guy's like cursing you out, you don't take it personally, right? Um, but let's say you're like walking with your mother, and then you know he's getting in your face, he's getting in her face, and all of that. You can still not take that personally, but still take measures to like move him out of your way physically, or try to protect you and your mother because he's getting too close, and you're just handling that, right? Um, so that's the thing there. Like, you can not take things personally, understand that, hey, this person's acting this way maybe because of past trauma, maybe because they're angry at the world, maybe because of a drug problem, all these types of things. You can not take it personally because you've gone meta about how they might be thinking. And then from there, you can take measures to correct their behavior if need be, if it's extremely necessary. Like, it's kind of like, what's it called? A good analogy I could give is like a teacher. Like, a teacher is speaking to like an eighth grade class, and like the class clown is like trying to make jokes and all of that. The teacher cannot take anything personally, but they can still identify the disrespect and stop the disrespect, right? Tell the kid stop it, or tell the kid to get out of the classroom, or give them detention, whatever. So they can identify that disrespect, but still not take it personally. So I hope that answers your question. Let's move on. Let's move on to Instagram questions. So Ro on Instagram asks me, "What insight changed your personal life in the most profound way?" Man, I don't know if I can choose one. Um, what insight changed your personal life in the most profound way? You know what? I would definitely say that most people, yeah, basically, no, most people don't care what you're doing. They don't really actually care about what you're doing. Um, and even if they seem like they care, it's only really temporary. Like, it's so temporary because they have their own survival needs at play. And understanding this has been so liberating. I think it first really clicked for me, like, what, 2021 maybe? Like, that's when it really, really clicked for me. So that's what I would say. It's like, people don't care, man. Like, they have their own lives going on. And your mind, your ego does such a good job convincing you that people do. It like cherry picks moments that people do. And a lot of times, again, those moments fall under they care for a second, then they really don't care. So that should give you so much permission to do what you want in life. and to take risk and to quote unquote look stupid, whatever that is. Because at the end of the day, people are just going to look at like, what did you leave behind, right? Like, like if you failed at something for many years and then you finally succeed, what's going to happen is people are going to remember the success. They're going to like underrate the failures. Um, and then they're going to be like, oh, he succeeded. Cool. And then they move on with their life. So whether you succeed or fail, it's like no one cares. So that's so liberating. It's like, do what you want. Next question on Instagram. Alexa asks, I wanted to ask you if your faith or your view of religion has changed ever since you become more self-aware or like knowing about psychology and how our mind works. Have you become more distant to God? I hope I make sense. Thank you. Great question. So growing up, I didn't really subscribe to religion. I was raised Catholic, went to church and all of that. Not a fan. It just seems so limiting. So limiting. So getting into understanding how the world works more in spirituality and psychology definitely helped me see the flaws in religion. But then in a way, I came slightly full circle. And what I mean by that is I started to, at first it was like, oh, religion is so wrong about a lot of things, which is true. Um, but delving into this work around spirituality and all of that, I started to see some of the truth in some religions. And then I began to integrate those truths, right? So what are the truths in Islam? What are some of the truths in Christianity? What are some of the truths in, um, you know, Judaism, right? And, I explored books, right? Like this one book that is so profound. It's The Ultimate Connection with God. It's like a Jewish spirituality book. And it does such a good job of like blending these certain topics together and tying them in together. So how I view it is I use God and the universe as synonymous. But when I say the God or the universe, I'm not applying. I'm not referring to like some human-looking God. Um, I am referring to an entity that is all-knowing, omnipresent, that is everything. We aren't separate from it, and it has so much universal intelligence. It has these various, checks and balances, life cycles, so many things operating at once. In fact, it's operating through you right now, and you don't really have to even think about it. Your heart is beating, your hair is growing, your nails are growing, your blood is flowing, all these things that are just happening. So, from my vantage point, I just got to a more truthful view of what God in the universe is. Um, than a like simplistic view of it. And also I've started to look at certain scriptures as like metaphors for things more than literal. And I think that's a lot better. That's a better way to view these various scriptures, is more like metaphorical aspects of things, right? Like, for example, being in a state of heaven viewing that as a vibration rather than an actual destination, for example. And when you're in a state of heaven, you're in a higher state to receive more, essentially. Cool. So, another one from Instagram, GXT Motion 08. This was a question he asked me a few weeks ago. I answered it, but I do want to answer it in this video. He said, I wanted to ask if you've experienced spiritual awakening, and how would you describe the feeling if you had? So yes, I have experienced a few spiritual awakenings, and you know, I don't think there's ever this thing where there's just one spiritual awakening somebody has. I think you get multiple, maybe some small ones, some bigger ones, and you essentially, how I would describe it is, it's kind of like this aha moment where things just click. Um, it's like a light bulb literally going off in your head, and it's like this, you're in awe of the insight, of the clarity that you get. Just like the name, it's an awakening. You're waking up where before you were asleep in the dream. That's this dream being the Maya, that we're in, right? So when you are awakened, you are out of the dream into a higher perspective that is there. So that's what it is. And a lot of those aha moments have happened in meditation. They have happened during walks. Sometimes, like, I'm listening to a video and it's an aha moment. So that's how I would describe it. It's like it's just this, like, you might, like, what often happens to me is a big smile comes across my face, or like I start laughing because sometimes the insight is so simple, but it has taken me like a while to identify that insight. And then when I do, I start laughing because I'm like, duh, like, of course, right? But, you know, at different states of consciousness, some things are obvious than others. That's why I'm always compassionate with myself because, you know, hey, in the past I didn't know it because I was in a different state of consciousness predominantly. And now I know it because I'm in a different state of consciousness. Last Instagram question. How can I find my tribe, people who share similar values and principles with me? That's a really good question. So first, it's all about obviously knowing what your values and principles are, and then also reaching people that are similar, or being seen by them so they can find you. This can look this can look very different in different ways. I mean, from like an internet standpoint, it's obviously like making content online. You find people that you're cool with, and that's kind of becomes your tribe because you're authentic. You're talking about the things you care about, and you just find like-minded people. From a more local area perspective, it's going to events and places where people like you would go, right? Like, if there's a concert that's coming about, you want to make new friends, for example. Um, let's say it's a passionate fan base at that concert. You go to that concert that you like, you talk to some people, and you get to know them, for example. So it's essentially putting yourself in places where your like-minded people would find you. Essentially, it's really that simple. It's not easy always, but it's more on the simple side. And also making sure you take efforts to stay in contact with them, stay connected, right? It's very easy to meet someone once or a few times and then not talk anymore. Obviously, it needs to be both sided, but look to stay connected to build that relationship, to build that connection with with these various people, and then from there on, you have your tribe. You have people you hang out with. You have people that share your values and your principles. So, there's that. Let's see. Ty on Twitter asked me, "What does inner peace actually feel like for you?" Inner peace is like this stillness. It's this quietness, this serene feeling, very calming, kind of no mind. I would say, like, there's no rush. Everything's going at its own pace. Slower brain waves, right? That's what I would describe inner peace. Um, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Brent on Twitter asked me, "Is there a version of you from the past that you secretly miss?" Yeah, I talk a lot about identity change, and as a whole, there's not a version of me from the past that I miss as a whole, like entirely being that person. But I will say there are aspects of me that I kind of do sometimes. Like, I would say maybe who I was around 2018, 2019. Some aspects of him was very, how would I say? I think I think I'm very liberated in how I think now, but his liberation was different in that it was kind of like this liberation in ignorance, funny enough, meaning he didn't, not that I still want to be like that, but he didn't have to take so much responsibility sometimes, right? And that led to him, you know, kind of not having to think too deeply sometimes about life and, of course, about consequences. Not that I really got into, not that I even got into trouble, but not having to think too much about that stuff. And that was kind of like this liberating college era thing. But right now, if I were to like integrate that more, how that would look like is making sure I continue to have really good judgment and not overthinking certain decisions that I know are really good for me, also really good for the people in my life as well, and just trusting my intuition. That's what it would look like, and continuing to have those spurts of treating life like a play, treating life like fun, not taking it too seriously. I think I do a good job of that, but I can continue to be even better at that. I think he did a really good job of that. I know it sounds like I'm playing a character, but hey, aren't we all? But that's what I would say about some aspects of my past self is his ability to just not have to have so much responsibility in how he thinks. It's just doing. Um, but how I would integrate that more is a little bit in a more refined, kind of more mature way. So, hope that answers your question. Last question. This is from TikTok. This is from a post I made. So the post I made said, "Put your attention on an object, then put your attention on your attention being on that object." And then Princess on TikTok asked me, "Why do we do this?" So the beauty of this is to practice mindfulness and to practice your ability to shift attention and to hold attention, because our attention nowadays is bad. And it's funny, this comes from TikTok because that's like the platform with bad attention spans. So that's what it is. You fixate on an object for 5 minutes, any object in the room, and then after the 5 minutes is up, maybe you could set a timer. You now shift your attention to your attention being on that same object. You're going very meta in your attention awareness, and to just hold that. And the level of like peacefulness you get from this exercise alone is just insane. It's like amazing. So I definitely recommend that for all of you watching this. That's the end of the Q&A. This is the first Q&A. There's going to be many more. I appreciate your questions. I'll probably do these about once a month. Stay tuned for the next video on this channel, and of course, next video on my main channel. Peace.